The wisdom of Epictetus. How to be happy, even if you are a slave. Imagine this. You are a slave. Your body does not belong to you. Your free will is severely restricted. Every day is filled with labor, deprivation, and constant dependence on the whims of your master. It seems there is no chance for happiness, inner peace, or a meaningful life. This is the ultimate limitation of freedom, the extreme point of human humiliation. And yet, in such conditions, in the very heart of the Roman Empire, there lived a man who became one of humanity's greatest teachers on how to attain true freedom and unshakable happiness. A man who claimed that even in the chains of slavery, one could be freer and happier than an emperor on his throne. His name was Epictetus. His name means acquired, a name often given to slaves. He did not write a single book, but his wisdom, recorded by his students, has survived the centuries and remains incredibly relevant today. In a world where we constantly strive to control external circumstances, our careers, finances, relationships, Epictetus offers a radically different solution. He urges us to relinquish control over what we cannot control and instead focus on the only thing that is truly in our hands, our inner world, our judgments, reactions, and attitude towards life. It sounds simple, but in practice, it is one of the most profound and liberating philosophical ideas ever formulated. Today, we will delve into the remarkable life and teachings of Epictetus to understand how to be happy, even if you are a slave, metaphorically or literally, in the modern world. The life of Epictetus, from slave to philosopher. So, who was this remarkable man? Epictetus was born around 50 to 55 AD in Hierapolis, an ancient city in Phrygia, in what is now modern-day Turkey. As we have already mentioned, his very name, Epictetus, is a Greek word meaning acquired or applied, which indicates his slave origins. His early life was typical of millions of people at that time. He was bought and brought to Rome, the center of a vast empire, where slaves made up a significant part of the population. His owner was Epictetus, an influential and wealthy freedman who had been secretary to Emperor Nero himself. He was a man of standing, which, on the one hand, meant that Epictetus was surrounded by people of a higher social class than an agricultural slave, but on the other hand, did not guarantee good treatment. Accounts of his life, though sparse, hint at physical suffering. It is known that Epictetus was lame, and some sources, such as Origen in his Contra Celsum, or later retellings from earlier, lost sources, claim that this was due to Epaphroditus's cruel treatment. Legend has it that his master mercilessly squeezed his leg to test his patience, and Epictetus simply replied calmly, "You will break it." When his leg did indeed break, he remarked just as calmly, "I told you you would break it." Regardless of the authenticity of this particular story, it perfectly illustrates his stoic endurance and the principle he would later teach. External circumstances can cause pain to the body, but they cannot break the spirit unless we allow them to. But in this seemingly hopeless life of a slave, Epictetus was incredibly fortunate. Epaphroditus, being an educated man, or perhaps seeing his slave's abilities, allowed Epictetus to attend lectures by the famous Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus. He was one of the most prominent and influential Stoics of his time, a teacher to many prominent Romans. It was Musonius Rufus who also taught that philosophy should not be an abstract theory, but should be applied in practice, who shaped the worldview of the young Epictetus. Under his guidance, Epictetus immersed himself deeply in Stoic philosophy, which offered a system of views on the world and man's place in it, the goal of which was to achieve peace of mind, ataraxia, and a happy life, eudaimonia. At some point, probably after Nero's death, Epictetus gained his freedom. We do not know exactly how this happened, but freedmen were a common phenomenon in the Roman Empire. Once free, Epictetus began teaching philosophy in Rome, developing his own unique interpretation of Stoicism, which was deeply rooted in his personal experience. He was not a theorist in an ivory tower. His philosophy was hard-won and tested in the harshest of conditions. However, his teaching career in Rome was interrupted around 92 to 93 AD. Emperor Domitian, fearing the influence of philosophers and their independent thinking, expelled all philosophers from Rome. Epictetus, true to his principles, calmly accepted this circumstance, which was beyond his control. He moved to Nicopolis in Epirus in northwestern Greece, where he founded his own school. It was there, in Nicopolis, that a young and talented student named Arian attended his lectures. Arian, who later became a prominent historian and politician himself, was so impressed by Epictetus' teachings that he decided to record his conversations and lectures. He did this so thoroughly that 8 books of discourses have survived, although only 4 remain, as well as a brief collection of basic principles known as the Manual or Enchiridion. Arian's notes are our main source of knowledge about Epictetus. Epictetus himself, following the tradition of Socrates, believed that philosophy should be a living dialogue and did not need to be written down. He lived a simple, modest life in accordance with his teachings and died around 135 AD, leaving behind not wealth or fame, but a priceless legacy of wisdom. The main pillar of wisdom, the dichotomy of control. The essence of Epictetus' entire philosophy can be reduced to one fundamental idea, which is the cornerstone of Stoicism and the central theme of his manual. He calls it the dichotomy of control. This is how he begins his Enchiridion. Quote, "Of all that exists, one thing is in our power, another is not. In our power are opinion, aspiration, desire, avoidance, in a word, everything that is our own doing. Not in our power are body, property, good name, office, in a word, everything that is not our own doing." This seems like such a simple, almost banal statement, but its implications are profound and revolutionary. Epictetus argues that all human misfortune, anxiety, stress, and suffering stem from a single mistake: trying to control what is beyond our control, or worse, ignoring and neglecting what is within our control. Consider this: we constantly worry about what others think of us, our reputation, our financial situation, our possessions, our health, our body, our career, our position, other people's behavior, the weather, politics, the past, or the future. According to Epictetus, all of these things are beyond our control. We can influence some of these things, but we can never control them completely. We can work hard, but an economic crisis can wipe out our savings. We can be kind and honest, but someone may still speak ill of us. We can lead a healthy lifestyle, but illness may still strike. And it is these attempts to hold on to and subjugate what by its very nature cannot be fully controlled that are the source of our frustration, anger, and anxiety. But what then is within our power? Epictetus clearly states our opinions, aspirations, desires, deviations, that is, our internal reactions, our judgments about things, our inner world, our prokarysis, our choices, our will. This is the only territory where we are absolute monarchs. No one can force us to think in a certain way, to desire something against our will, or to approve of what we consider wrong. Even a slave, deprived of physical freedom, was absolutely free in his inner world. He could choose how to react to humiliation, how to relate to his pain, how to interpret his life. This is the true freedom that Epictetus considered the highest good, the freedom of inner choice. Thus, the first and most important step towards happiness and peace is to learn to clearly distinguish between what is within our power and what is not. And then, with discipline, to focus all our energy and attention only on what is within our power. If we want to change our lives, we should not start by trying to change the world, but by trying to change ourselves, our judgments, and our reactions. Practical application: managing judgments and impressions. Epictetus does not simply offer a theory, he provides tools. One of the most powerful tools is working with our judgments and impressions. He states, people are not troubled by things themselves, but by their opinions about things. This is a revolutionary idea that has become the basis for many modern psychotherapeutic approaches, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. The situation itself is neutral. A traffic jam is just cars moving, but our reaction, "This is terrible, I'm late, everything is going wrong," is what turns it into a source of stress. Losing your job is a fact, but our judgment, "I'm a failure, the world is unfair," is what leads to despair. Epictetus teaches us to examine every impression. When a thought or emotional reaction comes to us, we must ask ourselves, does this relate to what is within my power or to what is beyond my power? If it is an external event or someone else's opinion, we must acknowledge, this is not my concern. If it is our own judgment, then we can review it, change it, question it. For example, if someone insults you, Epictetus would say that the insult itself is just a set of sounds. It only becomes an insult if you decide to perceive it as such. Your interpretation of this event, your judgment of it, is what causes you pain, not the other person's words. And you can change that interpretation. You can consider the words empty. You can consider the person ignorant. You can simply not attach any meaning to them. The choice is yours. This does not imply passivity or indifference. Stoicism is not apathy in the modern sense of the word. On the contrary, it is an active, rational approach to life. Epictetus urges us to act to the best of our ability, but with one caveat: if nothing prevents us. We must do everything possible to achieve our goals, but always remember that the final result depends on many factors beyond our control. We plant a seed, water it, and care for it, but we cannot force it to sprout if there is not enough sun or if pests attack it. We do our part, and the rest we leave to the will of the world order, or as the Stoics said, to the will of the Logos, the universal mind. Living in harmony with nature and virtue. According to Epictetus, as well as all Stoics, the goal of Stoic philosophy is to achieve eudaimonia, that is, true prosperity or happy life. And this eudaimonia is achieved through virtue and living in harmony with nature. For the Stoics, nature means not only the external world, but also our human nature, which in their opinion is rational. Living in harmony with nature means using our reason, logos, to make the right decisions. It means being rational, thinking logically and acting in accordance with the four cardinal virtues. 1. Wisdom, the ability to distinguish between good and evil, to understand what is within our power and what is not. 2. Justice, treating all people as equal members of the universal community, acting honestly and ethically. 3. Courage, the ability to face fear, pain, and hardship without succumbing to external circumstances. 4. Moderation, self-control, control over one's desires and passions, avoiding extremes. These virtues, unlike wealth or health, are always within our power. No one can take away our ability to be wise, just, courageous, or moderate. Even a slave could demonstrate these qualities to the highest degree. That is why Epictetus could claim that a slave who lived in accordance with these virtues was freer and happier than an emperor mired in vices and attached to external circumstances. True freedom is the freedom to choose virtue, not freedom from external constraints. This idea leads to the concept of cosmopolitanism. The Stoics believed that all people are citizens of one large global community. Our roles, son, father, citizen, teacher, are merely temporary designations. Ultimately, we are all part of a single whole, and our duty is to act for the good of that whole, showing compassion and justice to others, regardless of their status or background. For a former slave who had experienced inequality and cruelty himself, this was a particularly powerful and liberating teaching. Stoicism in the face of suffering and death. Epictetus did not shy away from discussing the most difficult aspects of human existence: pain, illness, loss, and death. On the contrary, he saw them as the greatest opportunity to apply Stoic principles. He taught that suffering is not an obstacle to virtue, but a test, a training for our spirit. As his famous saying goes, illness is an obstacle for the body, but not for the will, unless the will itself wants to become an obstacle. This means that although our body may suffer, our will, our mind, always remains free to choose how to respond to that pain. We can give in to despair and self-pity, or we can accept the situation as it is and focus on what we can control: our attitude towards illness, our courage, our endurance. Epictetus himself, being lame, served as a living example of this fortitude. He applied a similar approach to death. Death is an inevitable event that is beyond our control. According to Epictetus, fear of death is one of the greatest sources of human suffering. But if we understand that death is the natural end of life, and that worrying about it is as pointless as worrying about leaves falling in autumn, then this fear will lose its power over us. We should not fear the inevitable, but should focus on how we live each day while we are still alive. Epictetus taught that all external things, including our loved ones, our possessions, our lives, are given to us as if on loan. We should appreciate them while we have them, but be prepared to return them when the time comes without bitterness or attachment. This does not mean indifference, but rather an awareness of the transience of all things. When we lose something or someone, we can say to ourselves, "I am returning what was given to me. I am not losing what was mine, because it was never mine in the absolute sense." The legacy of Epictetus and its relevance today. Epictetus's teachings had a huge influence not only on later Stoics, such as Marcus Aurelius, whose meditations are permeated with his ideas, but also on the development of Western thought as a whole. His philosophy resonated with early Christianity and later inspired thinkers of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. However, what is most surprising is its relevance in the modern world. In our age of constant information noise, social media, where we constantly compare ourselves to others, and the race for success, Epictetus's teachings offer a powerful antidote to anxiety and dissatisfaction. We live in a world that constantly tries to convince us that happiness is the achievement of external goals, the perfect body, wealth, popularity, flawless relationships. Epictetus reminds us that true happiness and freedom lie within us, independent of any external circumstances. His dichotomy of control is a practical tool for reducing stress. When we encounter problems at work, in relationships, or with world news, we can ask ourselves, what can I control about this? Often the answer is very little. And then we can free ourselves from useless worries and direct our energy towards what is truly within our power, our attitude, our efforts, our moral choices. His ideas about the influence of our judgments on our emotional state form the basis of modern cognitive behavioral therapy. Modern psychologists teach us to rethink negative thought patterns and challenge irrational beliefs, a direct continuation of what Epictetus taught 2,000 years ago without a psychology degree but with a profound understanding of the human psyche. Ultimately, Epictetus' wisdom is the wisdom of resilience. It is the ability not only to survive, but to thrive in the face of adversity. It is a philosophy that teaches us that there is no external circumstance that can deprive us of our inner freedom and capacity for happiness unless we allow it to. He was a slave, but he left the world with a teaching about the highest form of freedom. He lived modestly, but his words have outlived empires. So, we have come a long way from a humble slave from Phrygia to one of the greatest thinkers whose ideas continue to shape our understanding of freedom, happiness, and human dignity. Epictetus teaches us that our true value and our true happiness do not depend on our status, our wealth, our health, or the opinions of others. They depend on one single factor, our inner choice, our prohairesis. He was a slave, but his mind was freer than the minds of many kings. He lost his body, but he kept his spirit. In our complex and often unpredictable world, Epictetus' wisdom is a beacon. It reminds us that regardless of the storms outside, we always have a refuge within. We always have the opportunity to choose how to react, how to think, how to live in harmony with our rational nature. He offers us not an easy path, but a path that leads to true peace and unshakable happiness that nothing and no one can take away from us. Consider today, what in your life is beyond your control, yet you still expend energy worrying about it? And what is within your power, yet you overlook it? Try applying Epictetus' dichotomy of control to one specific issue in your life. What will change? If you want to delve deeper into this topic, I highly recommend reading Epictetus' Enchiridion Handbook. It's a short but incredibly powerful book that can change your outlook on the world. Share in the comments which of Epictetus' ideas resonate with you the most and how you see them applying to your life. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss our next deep dives into the world of philosophy. Remember, happiness does not come from outside. It is created within, and the choice is always yours. Until next time.